Thanks, Caherlock, and good morning to all our witnesses this morning. I think this probably gets at the heart of the issue of assisted dying, and I'm always kind of taken by the 3 C's of assisted dying, and that's capacity, consent, and a conversant mind that is may choose to avail of assisted dying. And they're at the heart of, I suppose, the issue. And putting adequate safeguards in place is equally as important in relation to this. So my first question is in relation to coercion, because I think some people do have concerns that somebody could be coerced into making a decision not of their making, and that's extremely fundamental to putting safeguards in place. Is there any kind of evidence that this has happened, and a kind of has this happened in, say, particularly, I'm just picking for example in Oregon, where assisted dying has been kind of legislated for the last 25 years. Is there any evidence that them 3 C's have been breached on a kind of on a wide scale, on a wide basis?
First.
Deputy Kenny, can you tell me, was the 3rd C, did you say a conversant mind?
Conversant adult.
Oh, an adult, so,
yeah.
So somebody over 18 who
yeah.
has capacity.
Capacity, yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't read every single piece of literature available in English on this, but from so Oregon, like other jurisdictions in which assisted dying is legal, produces annual reports providing figures and just general demographic data, and they're not really that long. The Netherlands, if you compare, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at these at all, but the regional euthanasia review committees prepare in 4 languages extremely detailed reports, and they give examples of cases which are, so they have 3 criteria: straightforward, non-straightforward, and not meeting due care criteria. Those are the 3 categories of cases. And the 3rd ones are obviously the most serious, and one of them recently came before the courts in the Netherlands a couple of years ago. So, and they will outline in detail, and this is what Oregon doesn't do and what the Netherlands does very well, what is worrisome about the non-straightforward cases, why they're not straightforward. Maybe they didn't meet procedural due care criteria, maybe they didn't meet the substantive due care criteria. And one of the substantive due care criteria is ensuring that there is no external or internal influence on the person making the decision, or no limitations, sorry, so no internal limitations like borderline capacity or worries about capacity, and no external influence.
And obviously, if there is doubt, then that person can be refused. Obviously.
Oh, completely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen in New Zealand, which they introduced 2 years ago, there was a number of cases that they were refused on the basis, just they didn't fit the criteria.
You see, a legislature can decide, like Victoria has done, for example, recently in 2017, to put in place extremely stringent legislation. So I think there's 68 safeguards. According to some kind of one of the parliamentary discussions, there were 68
Victoria.
safeguards in Victoria. It's a really long piece of legislation. There are 5 steps to go through in the process of between the actual application, the first review, I guess, or the first part of the application, and the final approval. There's second application, there's a review of the there's 5 anyway stages.
5.
Yeah, so I mean it's very, very strictly, and some proponents of assisted dying feel that that's actually too stringent, that it might just, and this is the other worry, that it might place a disproportionate burden on people who would otherwise have difficulty, or in any case might have difficulty accessing the intervention. So you don't want to put too many hurdles in place, because that can actually arbitrarily disadvantage other people. So this is the balancing line, I guess, that you have to draw. I'm not aware of any discussion of coercion or undue influence in the reported documentation from any jurisdiction. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I think it means, I think, as Senator Carney suggested, that it would be extremely difficult to establish. I mean, that's not the kind of information that's going to be coming forth in parliamentary or like a statutory documentation of these procedures. But case studies or other forms of literature, or, you know, stuff available on the web, which I wouldn't go to as my primary source of information, obviously, might provide some illustration of what's going on behind the scenes. It's impossible really to determine
and obviously
that.
You have to trust the person, because at the heart of sometimes a debate is trusting the person, because obviously that has to be their decision. It can't be anybody else's, you know. Just my final question, because I know I'm running out of time here. In relation to the assisted decision-making legislation, and obviously this has been kind of talked about for a long time, in your opinion, has this piece of legislation kind of, I suppose, made this, the issue we're talking today about assisted dying, has it made it less complicated, or has it kind of complicated if we were as a committee to say, look, we need legislative change around assisted dying? Well, has that dynamic changed, in your opinion? Both opinions.
Well, we'll go to Mr. Keys for that.
I don't. I mean, we don't know exactly the full implications of how the 2015 Act is going to operate, because it was only commenced on the 26th of April of this year. So we don't fully understand how it will operate. In terms of how it might interact with assisted dying, I think that there's some issues in relation to, I think, as Dr. Campbell mentioned earlier, so advanced healthcare directives. So currently advanced healthcare directives under the Act, 2015 Act, allow you, if you're sufficiently clear, to say, I will refuse life-prolonging treatment. There's a question that's averted to as to whether could be amended to include, for instance, assisted dying, or to include doctor-initiated assisted dying. So there are issues about, you know, in terms of where a person, I think Dr. Mulligan on the last occasion she was before in evidence was talking about, might be a person who loses capacity to make the decision, but might be content in their non-capacitated state, such as someone who has dementia. So there's something to consider there. And then there's, in relation to, as I think I mentioned earlier, there would be consideration to be had in terms of substitute decision making of courts in relation to persons who lack capacity, whereas proposed to engage in assisted dying. There is, so currently a decision-making representative, that is a person who is empowered under the Act to make healthcare decisions on behalf of the person appointing them. They cannot consent on their behalf to the withdrawal of life-sustaining treatment. So you have to go to the High Court to get an order for removal of life-sustaining treatment. So, I mean, again, consider how would that be applied in the same way in relation to assisted dying? I think probably yes. I think that would almost certainly be a necessary safeguard in respect of someone who lacks capacity and is proposed to make a decision to end their life. So those are some of the interactions, but as I say, it's a very newly commenced piece of legislation, so we'll see how it operates in practice, I think.